Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Amber Valley, who made a very lot harder to persuade the UK's overseas territories, and I hope,
Again today, a very large bookmaker being fined millions of pounds. One of the reasons for that was that they didn't prevent money laundering through their shops for several years. Now, I declare I did go to a charity darts tournament sponsored by that bookmaker to get a donation for a charity in my constituency, so that is on the register, I'll declare that. But it just shows that money laundering is not just large amounts of very clever things moving around the world like the McMafia credits showed. It is everyday activity, and we need everyday businesses to be on their guard and preventing this happening. So I support the fact that the bill retains those very important powers going forward.
Dr. Rupa.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Amber Valley, who made a very thoughtful contribution with some of the gaps in this bill. And it's maybe because I'm the co-chair with him these days on the APPG for anti-corruption, or it's maybe because in the last Parliament I was our person on the criminal finances bill, arguing it from that position over there, or it's maybe because I'm just in front of the TV too much on a weekend, that I do get the sense that it feels like sort of money laundering is everywhere of late. So the honourable member just mentioned that this morning we heard of the record fine, £6.2 million slapped on William Hill for not being vigilant enough for preventing money laundering. And the way that we've seen that the proceeds of crime have been funneled through its channels, and the Gambling Commission have said that, they could do better. They must do better, as if they didn't have enough on their plate with responsible gambling. And then again, Sunday nights have turned into McMafia. It's just finished, actually, hasn't it? It's now Homeland night again in our house. But Sunday night for a while was McMafia night, where we saw the plot unfold with all sorts of stuff. The laptop click of a mouse showing how billions of pounds can be transferred very quickly internationally. They also had corrupt politicians, violent police in there, sort of counterfeit goods being hawked around high streets, all sorts of things. It's fiction, but it is based on fact. There was some factual basis there. And look, no one is going to argue against, no one so far has spoken against the idea of a bill called sanctions and anti-money laundering. The principle of this is good. No one is saying that we should be turning a blind eye to dirty money. But my worry is, as Right Honourable and Honourable members on both sides have mentioned this, that, again, this could do better. It could go a lot further. It's a good start. The Paradise Papers and Panama Papers, again, sort of shone a light on a murky world of international finance and taxation working for the benefit of those with access to vast wealth and an army of lawyers. For the few, not the many, when ordinary citizens just want a fair and transparent financial system. So, 2 cheers for this bill. And the thing that is the glaring omission, it's been mentioned many times, is that this government needs to work a lot harder to persuade the UK's overseas territories, and I hope one day the Crown dependencies too, to adopt the same level of transparency that we have in the UK and introduce public registers of beneficial ownership. It's not for nothing that London is frequently named as the world's money laundering capital. In 2016, the Home Affairs Select Committee concluded that the London property market was the primary avenue for the laundering of £100 billion of illicit money a year. And as a London MP, that's particularly galling because my inbox, my post bag, my surgery where people present themselves in person is full of housing issues. We have a housing crisis. People that want to get a foothold on the ladder, people in substandard accommodation. So, it's not enough to think that this is not our problem, because otherwise silence equals complicity in what is becoming industrial levels of tax avoidance and evasion. And this bill allows us to set our own sanctions and money laundering policy. But us leaving the EU will damage our ability to influence the policies of the bloc, inevitably. Britain's voice will be quieter on the world stage, its global footprint will diminish, we'll shrink in our role in fighting corruption globally. So some progress has been made in adopting private registers, but not all overseas territories have even adopted one of those. When they have, they're not centrally located or fully populated. And 4.5 years on from the government trying to persuade the overseas territories to adopt public registers, none has so far done this. Government seems to have given up on them. The point has been made many times today. Only Montserrat have made the commitment to do so again. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, the ghost of David Cameron seems to have been ever present in this debate. So that same David Cameron who held a World Anti-Corruption Summit, he invited the world to London in May 2016, how long ago it all seems. He talked about how the public register model should be he said a gold standard. And he said that these tax avoidance schemes are quite frankly morally wrong. Again, that disjuncture between what's legally possible and what is morally correct. But now we fast forward to 2018, and the Foreign Office only expects the UK tax havens to adopt the public register model when it becomes a global standard. There's a definite shift there, isn't there? It's hardly leadership, it's followership or backtracking or something, or a dereliction of duty, if we're being blunt. Absolutely. My honourable friend is so correct as ever. He says useless. I don't know if the microphone picked that up. But, you know... well, we all know what happened, and we all know what happened next. His ill-judged referendum was his downfall. And ironically, it does seem to be the EU that's taking the lead on this as it prepares to implement the 5th anti-money laundering directive. And it's because of our chaotic approach to Brexit and this sort of gap, this slippage, we don't know whether or where it will or will not apply, that we're here at all, and that this bill is necessary. Last December, the EU agreed that all its 28 member states should establish public registers of beneficial ownership of companies. The reasons they gave, you know, we can all get behind those. It allows greater scrutiny of information. It contributes to preserving trust and integrity in the financial system. And I think that as we have more and more countries that are now committed or have implemented public registers, you know, these are sovereign countries, not necessarily our overseas territories, I think 35 at the last count, and with all EU member states required to do so by 2019, maybe I'd suggest that this could be a golden opportunity to build a sort of new global standard. And when this happens in 2019, the UK government should seize the opportunity to ensure that our overseas territories follow suit as soon as possible after this. You know, regulatory alignment is a popular watchword these days, so we should apply it here. Because these territories that rely on wealth being stashed away from taxpayers are astute. They do it because they can get away with it. They use these arguments of competitiveness and security to argue against a centralised register. And, you know, the way that our government continues to drag its feet after making so much promise earlier is shameful, really. So, again, this government's anti-corruption strategy did hastily get rushed out. I think some members opposite didn't notice it had been there. I think it's because of harrying by people like my right honourable friend for Barking, who had several debates on this at the end of last year when we kept saying, where is that anti-corruption strategy? So that was hurriedly rushed out at the end of last year. And even that is fully aware of the importance of public registers. It says our ultimate aim is that public registers become the norm if this were to happen. So suddenly it's become conditional. It's not when it happens. If this were to happen, we would expect the overseas territories to follow suit. The government will continue to work with these overseas territories to strengthen the beneficial ownership arrangements. So, and also they promise a statutory review by December 2018. Why not now? I mean, it seems a year of nothing. So, with the kind of smokescreen of a consultation thrown in, people have said that, you know, people have got consultation fatigue. We know what the issue is here. And how can the government aim for something if it's taking no real action on it? It's not good enough. It's only when the UK mandates the overseas territories to create these registers that then transparency will flow from that, and this big question with all its constitutional, ethical, you know, people have talked about foreign aid, all those things, international dimensions, will be sorted. And it is right to hold the government to account on the promises that they've made themselves, as the all-party parliamentary group will continue to do. And I hope that the Tsar, who I notice is gone from his place. I would have liked to have seen a Tsarina, personally. But the anti-corruption czar, that again, we kept asking, where is that person? They were sort of unveiled at the end of the member for, I think, Weston-super-Mare. He's not there anymore. I hope he'll continue to hold the government's feet to the fire. And I would do a short plug for the APPG. Recently, we had an event where we had the cast and crew of McMafia in the building. My honourable friend for Oxford was also there. And it is not just fiction, it's happening in the real world. And they launched an app where you pop in your postcode, you can see how many secretly jurisdictions are near you. And, I mean, the programme showed Kensington and these smart central London properties, but it is happening in Ealing even. I put in my own postcode. 700. Ealing is the 14th most secret neighbourhood in the country. So there you go. So, I mean, we're lucky enough to live in one of the most desirable cities in the world, but it's desirable for the corrupt too, for those with dirty cash to stash and launder. And the government agreed to fix this 2 years ago at least, but no concrete progress has ultimately been made. And, you know, there's loads of examples. I won't go into them now because we could be here forever. But these stories of from Russia with cash, there's the Magnitsky has been mentioned today, but there's also the pop princess from Uzbekistan. My right honourable friend had a debate on the Azerbaijan laundromat case. There's Bywater Investments, North Korean shell games, it goes on and on. So look, this country has a real choice ahead in defining what kind of country we want to be post-Brexit. We can put an end to the millions of pounds of stolen money flowing through London's luxury property market, or we can continue turning a blind eye, kicking the can down the road, saying we're doing a consultation, pushing these things into the long grass and making London an even more appealing playground for the corrupt. Thankfully, the other place won significant concessions on Henry VIII powers that might have come to pass, but this House must be vigilant and ensure that the government doesn't try and sneak in more of these, you know, we've heard mention of statutory instruments, more secondary powers through the back door, giving ministers carte blanche. Leaving the EU will undoubtedly affect our ability to sanction regimes properly, and we will be vulnerable to legal challenges, because outside the EU, corporations will see us as, you know, an easy target. They'll have an easier task suing a smaller state. So I think I'm going to sort of really conclude here. But, you know, of the 59 pages of this bill, only 1.5 pages of it are dedicated to anti-money laundering, despite its title. So, you know, this bill is a disappointment and a missed opportunity from a government that promised much but is short on delivering. It's not just me who says that. Ask Christian Aid, ask Global Witness, Transparency International. So, you know, could do better is my verdict on this one.